Oh, that was a really bad clap. Welcome, it's your friendly neighborhood Badger here, and I'm back for probably what you guys are waiting for the most, the patch notes. Now, we're not going over absolutely every word this time, like we did in a previous video, the manifesto yesterday. I'm going to be doing a little bit of a TLDR on the biggest things that I noticed, and trying to cover as much as I can. If I miss things, look, I probably will miss things. Let me know in the comments down below what you both enjoyed the most about the patch notes and what you think is the scariest thing about the patch notes, because honestly, there's a bit coming. Now, the last thing that I will mention here is, yes, there are a lot of nerfs coming through here, but people really tend to focus just on the nerfs, or at least the people that are the loudest. There are still quite a few buffs in here, and because so many things are getting nerfed, a good way to mentally treat it is not much is getting nerfed. There are things that are getting nerfed more than others, and it's going to feel really slow on League Start. However, changing our mental attitude and going towards it as everyone's on the same playing field, let's just try and have fun in our favorite video game, it's going to make things way better. So hit that sub button down below, and let's get right into it. So obviously we've got Expedition Challenge League coming. Now, I've covered Expedition on a few different videos. I'm not going to go over everything right here. And the major new content it features right here is all about just the gems that we've already talked about as well, and a bunch of other stuff at the bottom here in terms of a utility flask. A couple of things that haven't been mentioned. An Iron Flask is coming, granting additional ward and restoring ward on use. We've then got 12 new divination cards, 9 new unique items, and 9 equipment base types. Now, the base types are most likely going to be all based around ward. Potentially, we might get some hybrid ward energy shield or hybrid ward evasion. Not really sure just yet, but we'll see about that. Minor changes are basically just talking about a couple of effects or sound effects that are coming through. Some notable ones are Stygian microtransactions of fire skills will be now igniting with a Stygian Ignite effect, which is really cool. And then a couple of 3D art and 2D art changes there as well to Divinarius and Belly of the Beast. Now, the big thing that we're all going to notice at the very beginning of League Start is the Act 1 changes. There's been a bunch of rebalance in Act 1. Roughly at level 1, monster life of all Act 1 monsters will be increased by about 46%. You're going to be taking 46% more time killing coast monsters, so have a bit of fun with that. However, the pack size is getting lowered in the coast and then increased at higher levels. The monster life also then scales up until level 84, where it will be the same as what it was. So all of the monsters that you would find in Act 1 are being changed. So even if you see those monsters in maps and everything like that, they're going to have that extra increased life on them. Pack size has been buffed in later areas of Act 1, as I did mention. There are new monster types. We've got cell crawlers and ghouls in the lower and upper prison. We've got tar zombies in the ship graveyard and graveyard cave. And then we've got a bunch of different crabs and squids in the Cavern of Wrath and Cavern of Anger as well. And Brutus has had time to renovate his arena. So we can expect a new and improved Brutus arena. That's not going to be the Brutus fight itself, but it will be Brutus. Alright, Flask changes. We know a lot about the Flask changes already. I've done a little bit of a video on that one, so we'll move on from that. Character balance is a little bit interesting here. We've got some character evasion rating lowered to 15, previously 53, and you do not get evasion per level, which is really interesting. They want you to be taking hits through the story as much as possible. Poison is dealing a ton more damage, 50% more damage than it used to, coupled with some nerfs. You know, you're still going to see Poison at a relatively strong state. I think it's going to be one of the stronger archetypes through 3.15, so we'll have to see. And Consecrated Ground, as we know, no longer grants 100% increased critical strike chance against enemies on Consecrated Ground. Great. Now, there's a lot of things coming through here. There's a couple of gem tags coming, a new arcane tag and a new prismatic tag. Arcane tag for skills that rely on big mana pools, and a prismatic gem tag for those who choose an element and don't use that element 2 times in a row. Which is interesting. I think the prismatic tag means that things like elemental hit are no longer having your fire, lightning, and cold tag, which means that you might not be able to scale, say for example, both plus level to cold and plus level to lightning. It might be a little harder to scale those, but that's a little bit of a speculation. I personally don't know exactly that's how it's going to work. We'll see. Now, skills themselves, specific skills, there are way too many to talk about individually, but I'm going to talk about the general kind of consensus about what is happening with all of these skills and a couple of standouts here as well. We will notice that with the skills themselves that are coming through, a lot of the skills, I would say 80% of the skills featured here are getting a base damage and effectiveness damage buff to their values. Now, this is to counteract what we're going to talk about a little bit later, which is the damage nerfs to a lot of the support gems, but do not consider your build being nerfed from 20 to 40% damage because a lot of these skills are actually getting buffed. For example, right at the top here, you can see Ancestral Protector and War Chief are getting a base damage increase right there. Now, there's a lot of other stuff coming through. Another general thing that we are going to see is attack speed and cast speed across the board is going to get a little bit nerfed in terms of quality of gems and everything like that. But the base damage and all of this is changing. One notable thing I want to mention is Blood Rage is getting a life cost instead of a mana cost. So that's actually a pretty nice buff for Blood Rage and not really needing to worry about mana pools on characters using that. And it's actually going to be really, really nice to use Blood Rage now very easily through the leveling process. Moving on, two things I would like to mention. Both Chain Hook and Glacial Hammer have been memed to absolute heck. Glacial Hammer now deals 269, nice, base damage, and Chain Hook now deals 169, nice, of base damage. So that's a little bit interesting there. I'm pretty sure that that's an internal meme there because they're not doing anything else other than buffing the numbers on those two meme-worthy skills right there. Fire Burst has been destroyed, but not really. It's still going to be pretty strong. I cranked the numbers. It's around about a 27% damage nerf with the effectiveness damage on top of it and the cooldown. But if you're going Ignite, you're going to be igniting for 1.5 second cooldown anyway. I would say Fire Burst is only viable as an Ignite skill now. However, it still works as kind of an auto bomber Ignite. It's pretty darn strong right there. Is there anything interesting that I've missed out? Ice Crash is broken. Ice Storm is pretty darn good right now. Lightning Arrow got quite a few different buffs right here. So I'd say Lightning Arrow coupled with the new Storm Rain is going to be a really strong starter on potentially a Raider, or even a Pathfinder or something like that. Now, the other two things, a Blast Chain Mine and High Impact Mine did get very nerfed. So it now has a 50% cost and reservation, previously 30. Supported skills deal 40 to 33% less damage, previously 35 to 25 less damage. So 8% less damage in the top end, and also the cost and reservation multiplier is really going to change things up, and this pretty much is emulated through High Impact Mine as well. So this is a big nerf to mine skills, basically making traps a little bit more lucrative, I would say. Play a trap skill, it's going to be really strong. That's kind of it. There is the new skill, the critical, what's it called? Critical ailments or something like that. Where is it? Oh yeah, here we go. Poison has been renamed to Critical Strike Affliction. So you don't get the damage with poison or the chance to poison on hit, but you get 55 to 83 damage over time multiplier for ailments from critical strikes. This is still, it's basically just changing it up, which is pretty nice. Alright, that's about it of what we have to talk about right there. There's a bit of ascendancy balance. A Hierophant is no longer granting the elemental ailment immunity, and Inquisitor is no longer granting that as well, but you do get 50% reduced effective non-damaging elements on you while you have Arcane Surge, which is a bit interesting right there. That does nothing with Ignite though, unfortunately. Slayer, Headsman and Bane of Legends have switched places. Champion, the small passives do not grant Fortify effect. Now this is the first thing that we're seeing of a very, very common theme that we're going to be seeing throughout the rest of the patch notes. Basically, Fortify effect, don't care about it. Don't worry about Fortify effect, just get Fortify and don't stack the effect. You also get, well, instead of that, you get attack damage while you have Fortify. Pathfinder no longer grants immunity to elemental ailments during Flask effect, and this has been changed to removing elemental ailments when you use a Flask. So a much more reactive gameplay rather than a proactive gameplay. And a little bit of a nerf to the poisons you're inflicting, dealing 20%, having 20% chance to deal 100% more damage, effectively a 20% more multi instead of a 30% more multi right there. Now, Raider has been changed as well with the elemental immunity. While phasing, it now grants a 50% chance to avoid elemental ailments while phasing. So this is a bit different. You can still avoid Ignite. However, Hierophant cannot avoid Ignite, or does not get reduced effect, I should say. Rapid Assault no longer grants 50% increased onslaught effect. So you're still getting the 100% increased onslaught effect from the Avatar of the Chase, but you also don't get move speed. You grant elemental damage with the small passives here as well. Assassin, big nerf to the poison damage, all I really need to say. Elementalist, big nerf to the golems, and Ascendant no longer grants immunity to elemental ailments on consecrated ground. It has effects of consecrated ground to create linger for 4 seconds. One thing I will mention is there is no talk about Saboteur's Pyromaniac, immune to ignite and shock. Now, I'm taking a risk talking about this in a video because I feel that this is now one of the strongest ascendancy points in terms of ailments, and GGG, if you're watching this, this is fine, don't touch it, because I am starting Pyromaniac. Yeah, it's really, really good. All you have to worry about is freeze, and if they're leaving the boots alone, you can get immune to freeze on boots, 100% immune to all ailments very easily. So that's all I'll really say there. Overall, not much has changed in terms of the power level. I think the hardest nerf in terms of damage power level is definitely Assassin in terms of poison. Raider is still very fine. Now, in terms of item balance, there's a couple of interesting things to talk about here. Basically, your Fugitive Boots and your Amethyst Ring, Blessed Boots are now called Fugitive Boots, and your Fugitive and Amethyst Ring grant more Chaos Resistance. Bit easier to get our Chaos Resistance right there. Fortify effect. Let's actually I'll just show you here. There are 20 instances of Fortify, and each time Fortify comes up, it's basically a nerf to Fortify effect, which is a bit interesting. Another interesting thing is the Veiled modifier that causes to trigger a socketed spell when you use a skill has a 250% cost and reservation multiplier. So your Bone Offering in your trigger wand is now going to cost, well, quite a lot. Let's just have a look. Bone Offering at level 20 is probably going to be costing us 33 mana. So that's going to be costing 100 mana every time that triggers, basically. Close to 100 mana every time that triggers. About 90. Which is interesting. And if you don't have that mana, it's not going to be able to trigger. A big change right there. That's pretty much it through all of these kind of item changes that is really stand out. We know a lot about the Flasks coming through, all of this stuff that's coming through, and all of the Adrenaline stuff, but then there's a lot of unique item balance. Now, I'm not going to go over all the unique item balance as well. Once again, we've got a bit of the Fortify effect stuff coming through. The unarmed attacked modifiers from unarmed uniques have been changed so they don't work with the explosive concoction, basically. They'll be changed to say unarmed attack speed with melee skills or attack damage with melee skills, for example. Explosive concoction is not a melee skill, so it doesn't work with that. And then we move on to the unique flasks. Overall, unique flasks mostly got a massive nerf. Notables are going to be things like the damage flask, like at Series Promise, and your Lion's Roar, just getting a lot less of a more multi. Bottled Faith is no longer giving you crit strike chance against enemies. However, if you treat it this way, Bottled Faith is actually just a better Diamond Flask, while also granting increased damage to enemies on consecrated ground. So it's still good, better than a Diamond Flask now, but it's nowhere near as good as it used to be. The Dying Sun is massively nerfed. Cinder Swallow has been, I think, destroyed almost. No, I don't think destroyed, but it's been wrecked a lot. So you can only get one of the 3 modifiers of recovering life, mana, or energy shield. You don't get all 3. It now has plus 90 to max charges and has 250 to 300% increased charges used. It now recharges 5 charges when you consume the Ignited Corpse, previously 1. And enemies ignited during Flask effect now take 7 to 10% increased damage, previously 10. So it's been changed, I guess, a little bit more of a choice on what you want to actually choose your Cinder Swallow Urn Flask for. That's basically it with all of that. A bunch more Flask charges, and that is it. Cluster Jewel balance. Now, there's not a ton to talk about Cluster Jewels. Well, there is a ton to talk about it, but it's actually really easily summarized. There are a few damage nerfs. Mostly, Cluster Jewels have been completely nerfed. All of the Cluster Jewels seen here. But across the board, the biggest nerfs are going to be to damage over time with Cluster Jewels. Damage over time has been massively massively hit in cluster jewels. Well, it doesn't actually really say it here, does it? Probably multiplier, right? Where are we? Oh, no, we're in item balance again. I meant to go more back down here. I somehow scrolled up. Yeah, as you can see here, there we go. That's a little bit better. Multiplier, multiplier, multiplier. There's quite a lot of nerfs, and all of these are nerfs. All of these are nerfs. So basically what this is meaning, yes, you know, it is a bit of a nerf to damage over time. We are seeing buffs in terms of critical damage over time multiplier through some items and support gems, and even on the tree itself. So that's actually going to be really strong. Damage over time should probably be played Critical Strike now, and if you're not playing Critical Strike, it's going to be pretty weak. Now, the really interesting thing here with all of this is damage over time builds relied on clusters before this. Basically, when I say that, I mean that you're missing out on so much damage if you're not going clusters. With all of these nerfs, it's actually not that much of a difference going non-cluster or cluster. So sometimes you're going to be building damage over time builds without clusters, and that's going to be totally fine. You're still going to be reaching massive levels with that. So keep that in mind. Monster changes. Active bosses have been buffed with their drops. Rebalanced ailment thresholds. I think this basically means that tough endgame bosses are going to be easy to shock and chill. Once again, poison deals more damage, but that's the monsters dealing more damage with poison. Alhizmen is dealing less poison damage to compensate with the buff to poison. Puncture-based damage has been buffed on monsters, and bleed damage by approximately 25 for all monsters that use a puncture skill, and improved audio and added dialogue for various delve boss fights. Really big thing right here, map tiers and locations have been shuffled. So a new atlas and area inhabited by abomination modifier can no longer roll on Maven Invitation, but it did nothing. I didn't even know that rolled. That's pretty interesting. The only atlas passive change that we are seeing, which is really, 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 really strange. The atlas passive changes, the only thing is Harbinger. That's been changed, well, basically nerfed a lot. Everything else is staying the same. So the strategies that you knew from last league on other ways of making currency have stayed exactly the same, which is really, really, really interesting. We have Zana mods of Fortune Favors the Brave, as always. And then we've got, from cheapest to most expensive, Abyss, Anarchy, Domination, Nemesis, Metamorph, Ritual, Delirium. Honestly, myself, I feel that this is really boring. A lot of people like Ritual and potentially Delirium as well, so they might really enjoy the last ones right there. But honestly, I think it's pretty boring. I'm probably just going to be using Fortune Favors the Brave always. And that's about it. That's kind of it. There's not really much else to say. It's just talking about quest rewards right here, which we don't need to go over. But basically, if you want to know where a specific skill is going to be given to you of the new skills, then have a look at the quest rewards. But that's basically it. macOS changes, Royale changes, and a bunch of bug fixes. That's it. So lots of nerfs, lots of hidden buffs in there as well. But honestly, the power level of everything is going to be shifting down in Path of Exile. Is Path of Exile dead? Yeah, no. No, it's not dead. Path of Exile is 100% not dead. There are a bunch of people really excited about this. I've been doing a bunch of polls around places. Granted that my community might be a bit biased in terms of enjoying it a bit more because I enjoy it a bit more. But around the base, around 60% to 80% of people are, over quite a few different polls, are kind of glass half full, or we're calling it flask half full with all of these changes coming through. So don't get too disheartened by what I would say is a vocal minority right now, really trying to doom and gloom the game, trying to bring the game down to their level. They're not enjoying it, so everyone else should not enjoy it. If you're excited, right? If you're upset, you're upset. But let's just see how it plays out. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this content, let me know in the comments down below. And that is all I really do have to say. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, Badger out.